Hello, Podfam, and hello, Rachel. How are you today?
I am doing all right. We had a bit of a panic moment before we started this episode where my microphone was acting up. That really would have just wrapped up my day. That's been a bit nuts in just the best way if it didn't work, so thankfully it did. But otherwise, I've been good. I had a nice bowl of craft dinner this evening and was watching Tarzan, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Love it. Love a good Phil Collins musical, practically, right?
Oh, I was just having like a solo concert, just belting it out while I was cooking dinner and like eating my dinner. So it was a good time. But how are you?
I'm doing good. I had Alfredo tonight. I had the grown-up
Oh,
version of Kraft Dinner.
wow. I'm so happy for you.
I feel like an adult.
You're just like, wow, it's just the gourmet.
It
It's
was
the gourmet
it
version.
was gourmet, and my boyfriend ate it. And as our listeners know, he turns his nose up at Kraft Dinner
Hmm.
because he's Italian. But if you make him Alfredo, he's just like, "This is excellent," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's the same thing,
It's the same thing.
same thing, just not orange."
Yeah.
um,
Well, on the topic of boyfriends, I thought this would give you a little bit of a laugh, but I'm by myself tonight,
mhm,
right?
good.
And I'm on my way home from the gym, and has already left, and he called me to say he'll see me later, and he goes, "Now, okay, so there's craft dinner in the cupboard for you, or some ramen if you want that. There's some vegetables, and there's some goldfish if you need a snack." And I was just like, "Am I your 12-year-old child that you're leaving at home tonight?" Because he is the cook
That's
in our
true.
house, as our listeners know. But I was just like, wow, I mean, I am gonna go make the box of craft dinner, but, like, I have kept myself alive for a long time before I met you.
Yeah, yeah, you are capable of, turning on the oven.
Yes, I indeed can. Was I going to? No, but, I just thought that would give you a little giggle
Yes, well, nice to know that he checked the cupboards before leaving so, wouldn't starve or
to
just
make
order a
sure
pizza.
that the 12-year-old knows that there's craft dinner in the bottom cupboard.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah,
Important stuff.
it's very important.
What are you having to drink though tonight?
I have a ginger tea tonight.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I've been staying on the herbal train lately.
That's pretty good. I'm having a
Yeah.
gingerbread pu'er tea.
Ooh, I had that yesterday at work.
It's so soothing. Like it's just like a little bit of ginger, but literally like a little gingerbread cookie as well. So I
Mhm,
love it. It's really rich. It's nice
mhm.
evening tea.
A little bit of spice.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
exactly.
But what are we gonna be talking about tonight? Because this one is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, this is so we've just really wanted to address I don't like it's a problem in society,
Mhm,
but really we just kind of want to talk about the evolution of it and our own thoughts, what society is thinking, and bring up some examples, and that is of the classic Power Woman trope.
mhm,
Our three lovely ladies we're going to be talking about tonight are Cruella De Vill, Miranda Priestly from The Devil Wears Prada, and Jessica Pearson from Suits. These are
mhm.
three power women, and Rachel, I'm going to just go out there and say, like to us, they're kind of idols.
Miranda Priestly is my god.
Oh my God, the number of times we have
Yeah.
quoted her, I don't
Mhm.
even know. I don't even
Every
know.
day.
Every day,
Every day.
every day, and like
Mhm.
Jessica Pearson. Oh, I would love to look that fierce,
I know. Oh my god,
you
like,
know?
her dresses
Oh,
see, no one could pull off, like, a midi kind of bodycon work dress better than her.
no. No, she is just
Like,
fabulous and she is fierce. But the problem with
yes.
this is for a lot of these characters, and we're just touching on like a teeny tiny percentage of them tonight
Mhm.
because like there's plenty of them out in our pop culture, movies, TV shows, books, but a lot of them are painted with like a negative light, and
Mhm.
it very much seems like society doesn't want us to strive to be like these women.
Mhm.
And I just don't think that's right because these are all very strong women,
Mhm.
and I don't see anything wrong with us trying to look to them as role models. Now, obviously, within the context and the storylines, yeah, there are some problematic things that we're not trying to just gloss over that. But there's so many good things about them. But society has said, you shouldn't want this. Like, this is a
Yeah.
bad thing. To be a powerful woman who's driven by her career, that's bad. Like, do not go for this. You need to
Mhm.
stay in a very feminine classic role. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about this trope too, I don't know if you found it when you were researching as well, is it falls under the realm of a lot of different female character tropes out there. So Miranda specifically, when I was doing some more like focus research on her, she shows up under like the strong woman trope
Right.
or the independent woman trope
Yeah.
or the dragon lady trope, etc. And it all just kind of boils down to this power woman concept where it's interesting because let's use the strong woman trope, for example. So those characters are usually like, Wonder Woman, right?
Mhm.
She kind of falls under that. There are some negative traits in there, but it's usually viewed as like, wow, she's just like such a superwoman. She can do it all. And there's like positive notes in those other tropes, but when you really boil it down to this powerful businesswoman, it does become very negative in a way that the other versions of this story don't.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like just at the end of the day, like, yeah, here's a really strong character, has the development behind them, has the power, can demand attention, but like, don't go for that. Like we're gonna.
But their
She is
CEO, how dare
yeah,
they?
like she is ultimately a bad person because she's just gone so masculine that there's just
Yes.
no room for her to be a good woman.
Yes. So I think a great place to start then is the traits that we often see that, to be honest, many of them showed up in the 1950s with Cruella De Ville's first iteration
Hmm.
and continue to today. So let's get into it. I think one of the first ones that is very common is she is either a spinster,
Yep.
as Cruella De Vil. She is a divorcee or on one of her multiple marriages,
Right.
or she just can't keep a healthy relationship going.
Yeah, you never see, the overly successful career woman with also the happy relationship. There's probably one out there, but like I am certainly just drawing a blank right now
Mhm.
because there is no character that just jumps right out at me and saying like, "Oh, you know what? She's successful at her career and has a happy
Mhm.
relationship." Or
Mhm.
is fine that she's single because not everyone has to be in a relationship. It's always just like, "No, I have a great career, and on relationship sides, like, I just can't get a man, keep a man, or I just, like, get married, they divorce me and everything." Like, there's always just that underlying tone that there is. I don't know if it's like a power struggle,
Mhm.
like, if you're a really strong female, that's gonna be a turn off to men, like,
Yes.
that's not the kind of woman that they want to be with. They want to be with a more soft-spoken and this is very passé, but, like, not a breadwinner.
Yes.
It's like the man has to be the provider and the breadwinner, and not every no. No, that's not a requirement.
Yeah, and as this trope has evolved into more, I guess, like the last decade or so, the acceptance of female leaders in media has been there. It's becoming more common and people celebrate it more. But I've noticed that usually part of their character development is essentially having to give up either their career entirely or to take a step back
Yeah,
because having a healthy relationship or having a partner is the new motivator and is something that you should give up that part of your life for in order to have this relationship. So we'll get into more of that
for sure,
later, but
for sure, and just to
yeah.
kinda, like, briefly add on to that note, it's almost like the partner in that relationship won't be able to handle if you have things that are important in your life,
Ooh,
Like, that's just
ooh.
kinda as you were saying it, like, that was coming to my mind here of just like,
Mhm.
okay, we're in this loving relationship, but for some reason, I'm not allowed to do what I love. Like, that's just the message that I'm getting, and like, what?
They're allowed
What?
to do what they love though.
Yeah, that's fine. They can go be the CEO and it's fine, and they don't have to give up anything that they love to do, but for a woman, she's If she wants to have a family, she's got to give up the job. And no,
Mhm.
no, you can be a successful career woman and have a family as well.
Because apparently no female CEO ever had children.
Yeah, apparently not. I was unaware of this fact, but this is what movies and television tells us.
Yes. All right. So next trait that usually comes up. What do you think?
Kind of want to jump off the no relationship, and it is that sense where like they're always independent, they're kind of that loner. You
Yeah.
never actually see them with any friends
Mhm.
around them. It's very much just them on their own because they're so all consumed with their job that they couldn't
Mhm.
possibly have any friends, right?
Mhm.
Like that's just stupid. I feel like I'm gonna say that all night.
They don't
It's
have
just
time for
stupid.
anything, obviously.
No, like, they create them just so one-dimensional that if, okay, you're gonna have a career, well, goodbye relationship, goodbye friendships,
Mhm.
goodbye children, and that's just another common trait that I see in pretty much, like, all of the women that we're gonna
Mhm.
be discussing tonight and just, the other ones that fall into this trope. You never see them with friends, really.
Or their friends are in their workplace.
Yeah.
And usually those are, kind of not imbalanced.
Yeah, no,
They're
no,
rocky
yeah,
friendships.
like, it
It's imbalanced,
yeah,
but
it's an
yeah.
imbalanced, like, power relationship,
Mhm.
like, they're kinda work friends, but deep down, like, it's not, like, really a true friendship, it's more like, "Oh, you're my boss," and, like, "You're
Mhm.
my coworker," kinda thing, right? Like, it doesn't really ever paint anything that's, like, truly deep and, like, that's a person that they can
Mhm.
rely on. It's just like, "Well, we talk because we work together."
Miranda and Nigel.
Exactly.
Yes. Speaking of Miranda, another trait that I think is very common is that the power woman usually maintains complete control of her working environment
Mhm.
and is a perfectionist at heart and demands that of the world around them. Which I think that's because that is very apparent in Miranda's character, as we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But I feel like this expectation of a female boss demands perfection of everything.
Yeah, like, they can't get anything wrong, right? Like
Well, they can't, but also they put that expectation on their employees
right.
from, the stock person to their vice president. And it's almost creates this picture that the environment that a power woman creates is uncomfortable and anxiety
Extremely,
inducing.
toxic, like, that's what they kinda
Yeah.
presented. It was like, "Okay, if this is the woman in power, it's going to be a toxic workplace." Right?
Yeah, like you're gonna be panicking. Like, the opening scene of Devil Wears Prada when Miranda Priestly is coming into the office.
Yeah,
Like that.
yeah.
That is what it must be like to work with them. And I just don't think that's true.
No, it's
You
not
know?
true. Like, I've had the same problem with male bosses, it's
Exactly.
not a woman thing, it's really just an individual person thing because then I've had bosses who are female and very like, they create a wonderful work
Mhm.
environment that you feel strong as a female worker and just as a team, like, the team is very cohesive and very understanding of each other.
Yeah, in movies and TV, when a male boss demands high quality work from their employees, it's not viewed with this perfectionist standard of, oh, it must be toxic to work for them. It's just a workplace.
Yeah, like, to that, if, like, oh, if your boss expects something of you and he's a man, it's just like, "Oh, that's so empowering. I'm so
Mhm.
inspired to do well." Where in the female role, it's just like, "I am terrified. This is like a devil of a woman, and she's an awful
Yeah.
person," right?
Just because she has to present traditionally masculine traits
Yeah.
in the workplace, which goes against how we are conditioned. Another one that was interesting as I was looking into this is specifically with like 1950s to 1990s range, the consideration around vanity
Mhm.
as a trait,
Yes.
which I found was very interesting, where it's almost that vanity is presented as bad,
Okay.
especially
Yeah.
when it comes to Cruella De Vill.
Yes.
So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's more going back to someone who is vain being a bad trait,
Hmm.
right? So in these roles where they're trying to paint that successful person as a bad person, they're going to pull more on what is it, like the 7 deadly sins kind of thing, and
Yeah.
like being vain and self-absorbed is one of them. So it's like they just
Mhm.
amplify any of those traits because
Mhm.
as like a society, we default to like that's a bad thing, right? So then we
Yes.
without there being any narrative needed or words spoken, we already know as an audience that like, oh, okay, like she seems really self-absorbed.
Mhm.
That's bad. Okay, so,
Yeah.
like, already, the characters haven't even said anything, and I already know, like, that person's good and that person's bad. Devil Wears Prada, another great example in that opening scene where all those women are getting ready and, it's
Mhm.
all about the vanity and how they look, where Andy, like, literally rolls out of bed and then, like, walks to her job interview and her hair's a mess, and, like, we're like, "Oh, she's, like, the fun, lovable, dorky character." But all those women
She's the
who are
good
going to
girl.
work, they're they're vain, like, they
Mhm.
must be awful.
No, I agree with everything that you said there, and it's a very interesting thing to put onto women. Another example of this is Elle Woods at the beginning of Legally Blonde.
Right.
Is her vanity and, her liking how she looks and stuff is a trait that's put on her like, "Oh, well, she's not very smart then."
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on the character and depending on the storyline of what the writers are trying to put out there, it's either viewed as vanity makes you a villain or vanity makes you dumb.
Yeah, you can't be a good character and care about how you look, you know?
Apparently
Yeah.
not.
So, like, kinda what the message here
Unless you're a housewife.
yeah, if you're a housewife, then, like, you have to look good because that's for someone else, right? That's not for you.
What was that show? Mad Men?
Yeah, Mad Men.
Marketing?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good example of that.
Yeah, exactly, like, "Oh, I get done up every morning before my husband gets up, because God forbid he sees me with my hair curlers in," right? And but that's going back to, like, those women, it's fine if they're dressed up and looking nice because that's for their husbands, where all these career women, they're getting dressed up, like, for themselves, so that's bad.
Yes.
Yeah, so kinda like to round out these common traits here, they're independent, they're successful, but it's at a huge cost, they have no work-life balance. Overall, they're just like their whole, persona is just being a bitch because
Mhm.
God forbid a career woman is a nice person.
Mhm.
That's too big of a concept. And it's just like it just paints this whole cautionary tale, right?
Yes.
Without even saying anything on the screen. It's just like, this is not what you should strive for.
Yes, you should not stray from the traditional feminine and familial values
Exactly.
because if you do, then you're selfish.
Yeah, you're gonna wind up alone. That's really what they're telling you.
Yes. Which not great, but we'll get into that more starting with Cruella.
Yes. Oh, so Cruella, she is a
Yes.
character who has a really interesting evolution, and she was kind of actually
Mhm.
a bit of the inspiration a long time ago when we wanted to address this topic because she's been portrayed in the 1950s, the 90s, and now most recently. And it really did open up my eyes because society has changed. It's come a long way. I know we're
Yes.
kind of shitting on it tonight, but like overall, there's been a lot of change to how female characters are portrayed. So
Mhm.
let's first talk about the 1950s Cruella De Vill. She was essentially a spinster and a socialite. So she just kind of either inherited her money or married into it, but like was divorced or like it's kind of it's not really clearly explained, but she really does portray that spinster life where,
Mhm.
she doesn't want to be married or was married and, she doesn't have a man. So that's automatically bad. She doesn't have a family,
Yes.
that's 2 strikes now. And then, of course, how Disney movies portray things.
Mhm.
If there's green smoke or just a
It's
green
bad.
tinge, you are evil. So, again, going back to just that imagery without even having to have the character say anything, we already know that
Mhm.
that's a bad thing. So, like, as we're watching these movies as children, that's what we associate it with. And
Mhm.
I don't wanna say it's like programming, but it's very much reinforcing that this is a person you should not want to strive to be.
Yes. Cruella De Vill, especially in that earlier adaptation, is presented as, like, the baddest of the bad
Oh, yes.
of Disney villains. Like, everyone knows her name. I'm pretty sure she's, like, somewhere on a top 50s list of bad villains.
Yes.
But when you contrast her with, like, Scar from The Lion King, she's really not as bad of a villain.
trying to make a coat out of puppies aside, she really
Yeah.
had, like, nothing else that was, like, a crime against humanity, except for the fact
Mhm.
that she was single, you know?
Yes.
That was really her one thing besides, like, okay, the story, the plot-driven story that made her bad, but for some reason, it's just so much worse because she's that
Mhm.
spinster.
Yes. Especially in a story about the nuclear family.
Ah, yes, because she
Yes.
did not have the husband and the 2.5 children, which
Yes.
in the 1950s, that was pretty much what women were supposed to strive for. Because, like, yes, there were women in the workforce, but
Mhm.
really, like, that was not so much the norm. So that's kind of when we jump forward to the 1990s version of Cruella. We've gone through the 60s, 70s, and 80s where women are strongly in the workforce now and kind of climbing the corporate ladder.
Mhm.
However, she's now painted as a cold businesswoman because now she's so successful. And we're falling back to those common traits we already discussed, where she's against marriage.
Mhm.
And for even that time, we were born in the 90s. It was fine for a woman to have the job. We were very much used to a dual income household, but
Mhm.
it was still expected that, the plan was you get married and you have children.
Yep. And there are a lot of things that she says to Anita, especially in the opening
Hmm.
of the live adaptation, that you know she was making some good valid points,
Yep.
but it was still presented as villainous because in society at that time female leaders were becoming more normalized, but it still was not fully accepted as something that a woman should strive for, and it was something that you should avoid.
Exactly. And the quote that we're talking about is that more women have been lost to marriage than war and famine combined. And the funny thing is, I know that in that time frame, and that honestly went over my head when I was a kid watching this movie, that
Mhm.
it was painted in a bad light. But then when I was
Yeah.
watching like the evolution of Cruella and they brought this quote up and I was just like, man, what a powerful quote. Like
She's making a valid
know,
point. Oh my
I know.
god.
It's so funny that, like, adult me in 2020, like, took that as just like, "That is so true." Like,
Mhm.
it's so funny.
Mhm.
So I feel like some of the things that were portrayed as being bad, and even now, like, if I were to go back and watch that movie, like, yes, okay, there's the awful plot-driven story of Cruella, but really,
Mhm.
like, if you took that part away, she's this, like, CEO fashion designer who is very
She's a
good at her
badass.
job, right?
Yeah.
Like
And she sees talent in Anita
yeah,
and is like, "Don't squander
I
it."
know, she's literally like, "You have so much talent, I want to help you succeed." And the
Mhm.
movie is just like, "No, no, she needs to quit
She
her
needs to
job
get
and become a
married.
mother and get married."
Yes.
Like, ugh.
It's such an interesting that movie, because I was the same. Because I think I was probably, like, 4 years old when this came out, so it definitely went right over my head, but it's very interesting because it's literally presented that being a successful female leader in the business world is the cautionary tale.
It is.
It's just like, "Kids, we know that this exists, but no, 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 no.
Yeah, like, it's
No, no, no."
it's fine if you have your cute little job, but, like, don't overreach, okay?
Once you meet the man you're gonna marry, you should quit
Yeah,
right away.
yeah, you should quit or, like, back off. Don't strive for too much in the career world.
Yes. So, going off of this before we jump into lovely Miranda,
Mhm.
did you want to touch on the 2021 version of Cruella? Because I know that you've seen it. I personally have not, but I would love to hear your thoughts on where she is today.
Yeah, so I saw the most recent Cruella movie, and I actually quite enjoyed it. Like, I know everyone had their mixed reviews, but something Disney has been doing lately is going back and addressing the stories of these villains. And I think this was just so well done for giving her a backstory and a
Mm-hmm.
reason to why she became who she became.
Mm-hmm.
And, they took away the awful thing of like, oh, she wanted to kill the puppies to make a
Yeah.
coat. No, she actually loves the Dalmatians and just takes them and they're like her guard dogs. So I love that they changed that narrative, but
Mm-hmm.
it was still, like, they made her someone who you wanted to root for, which I
Yeah.
loved. Like,
Mhm.
she was literally scrubbing toilets in a department store, but just wanted to design and
Mhm.
create all of these amazing clothes. So, I
Mhm.
kinda love that they gave her reasons for
Mhm.
becoming who she wanted to become, and, still, we could argue that her boss, who was, like, the major fashion designer, was kinda like the Miranda Priestly. So, we still
Yep.
kinda had that, career woman trope, unfortunately. But
The
at least,
hard ass boss.
we made a little bit of progress here, giving her, you know, um, something to root for, which
Yeah.
which I really enjoyed. So I don't wanna spoil it for anyone, so definitely go watch that movie and let us know. But, I just love that we kinda had a successful woman who you
Mhm.
cheered for at the end.
Yeah.
Even though it was kind of at the expense of another successful woman. Baby steps, guys, baby steps.
Baby
We are getting
steps.
there. If that was a man, ooh, if they made it like a man CEO
Mhm.
and that's who she took down, that's actually, yeah, come on, Disney, that's actually how you should have done it. Now I'm thinking about it, like,
Remake it.
yeah, of course, they put successful woman against successful woman because, there can only be one.
Mhm.
There's no room for 2 women to be successful.
Mm. We're still there, I guess.
Yeah,
Alright.
okay. So, like we said, baby steps. We're getting a
Baby
little bit
steps.
further, but at least now there's, like, a bit of acknowledgement. It's not perfect, but
Mhm.
we're doing better than the 1950s Cruella De Vill.
Yes.
So,
Yes, at least we have Cruella to root for now. Not
exactly.
so much her boss, but Cruella, she good.
Yes, she's good. Alright, so let's fast forward to 2006 now when The Devil Wears Prada came out with Miranda Priestly, who is, like, I'm gonna say it, one of our idols.
She's absolutely incredible and, definitely have been Andy before
Oh,
in my
yes.
life,
Oh, yes.
but I like to think that I'm slowly, taking on the best of Miranda's traits
Ah, yes.
in my career. So let's dive into her character because she is very interesting because I'm not sure how old exactly she was supposed to be. Like, I'm kind of going to say like 45 to 55 range, would you say?
Yeah, I would say she was a woman in her 50s. I would say she's in her 50s. Like, I
Yeah.
know she has her 2 girls who look like preteen
Yeah.
age, but because, she's a career woman, she probably had children later on. So,
Mhm.
I'm gonna say, she was in her 50s.
Yes. Something about Miranda that's very interesting is that with her age, she would have been getting into the fashion industry at the time where it was almost entirely male dominated in leadership positions. I mean, that's still that way in a lot of industries today.
Mhm.
But she really was in that generation where female leaders had to take on traditionally masculine traits to get to the same place,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, going back to the original traits that we presented at the beginning of the show, she's the perfectionist. She wants everything to, be working smoothly. Everything needs to be efficient from somebody having their shoelace tied to some big business decision. It all has to be perfect around her.
Right.
But, there's also some really great traits about her that watching now, I see like she's incredibly detailed,
Mhm.
she's incredibly resourceful, and she really emphasizes excellence in herself and her workers, right?
Right.
But it was 2006 and she still was the villain.
Yep, yep.
And why do you think that was?
I just think, it was portraying Miranda as someone who was almost, like, so masculine
Yep.
that she left behind all her femininity, like,
Yeah.
with the exception of her great sense of fashion, which is and then is vain, as we discussed earlier. That is a bad thing. But yeah, we're just automatically positioned to root for Andy
Mhm.
against Miranda. And I kind of want to talk
Mhm.
about her relationship a little bit. So, going back to where she has such a successful career, so she can't possibly have a happy marriage, right?
Yes.
Because in the movie, she says, another divorce, right? Like, so she's obviously been married several times, and it's just like, hey, I'm going to get divorced again. It's going to be all over the tabloids. Like, people are just going to
Mhm.
attack me because I'm like they literally call her the snow queen. The
Yep.
dragon lady, the devil, she just has no room to be good at her job and
Mhm.
be a good wife, right? Because,
Yes.
like, no, everything she has built, that is
Mhm.
at the sacrifice of everything else in her life, which just isn't fair and it's not true, right? Like, as we've been saying all night, like, this is not really reality, but this is kind of how
Mhm.
society portrays about this is what's gonna happen if you try to be so successful with
Mhm.
your job. And then Andy is kinda like her protege, Miranda says that she sees herself in Andy when she was younger.
Mhm.
And, as Andy starts to kind of find herself and actually just be good at her job. Like, literally, Andy
Mhm.
went from being shitty at her job to good at it,
Mhm.
and then that is when her boyfriend, Nate, decided to be like, "You know what? We need a break." Right? Like, you're just spending so much time with your work, you have no time for me.
Mhm.
Nate is the devil, guys, like, he is the true villain of this movie because I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to give up your job just to make your boyfriend happy.
No, yeah, love how the discourse has shifted since this movie came out to be
Same,
like, "Nuh-uh."
same. We
But
all root for Miranda, and we're just
mhm.
like, "Fuck you, Nate. You're
Yes.
the terrible person. You are the toxic one."
Yes. So something that I find very interesting though about her relationship with Andy. So, like we talked about earlier, these women are supposed to essentially act as a cautionary tale,
Right.
right? And there's Miranda and there's Andy on the other side, the traditional good girl.
Mhm.
But it's 2006. We've kind of left the 101 Dalmatians expectation of women. From the 50s, it was you're not working. It's usually about the nuclear family. Moving into the 90s version, where she had her little job, but once she got married, she should leave,
Yeah.
right? Where with Andy, we're moving into that time in the early 2000s where, women can be married and also work,
Mhm. Yes.
right? That's a normalized thing. But with Miranda, she has kind of rejected that whole realm of, focusing on family. She is mostly focused on work.
Mhm.
And she has this sense of perfection. But we villainize that perfectionism,
Right.
right? But at the end of the movie with Andy, she's given up her job with Miranda, but she is moving on with being a journalist.
True.
She is moving forward in her career. But there is also this like aftertaste in the movie that, she's most likely going to get back together with Nate. So she's going to have the job and the boyfriend.
Mhm, and I just have to jump in here real quick because, like, yes, it's kinda left that they're going to be back together again, but then why is
Mhm.
it okay that Nate is, like, moving to another city for a job?
Don't get me started. We need to just do a whole episode on Nate
We're gonna have
because I could yell at him. Um,
the issue with Nate, that's just gonna be the episode. Yeah,
yes.
because it just kinda does that whole flip to the audience of just like, okay, you know, Andy's no longer working for Miranda, but she's got a good job and now she can like get the boyfriend back, but never mind. It's fine if Nate puts his career first and moves to a different city.
Mhm.
Right? Like,
Yes.
and like it was kind of
Oh.
left with a note
I
because I don't remember what city he moved to. Was it Seattle or something?
think it was, like, Chicago?
Chicago. Yeah, I think it was Chicago.
Somewhere close, but not close
Yeah,
enough.
and the line that's coming up is, like, Andy saying, like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss your" I don't know, late night waffles or something like that?
I think it's, like, grilled
Was it
cheese.
grilled cheese?
Late night
Okay.
grilled
Oh,
cheese, yeah.
yes, yes. You're doing way better than I am here. Um,
I've watched that movie many times. I hate Nate.
I know, oh, and it's just like, "Oh," she's like, "I'm gonna miss your n late night grilled cheese," and he's like, "Well, I'm pretty sure we can have grilled cheese in Chicago." So, like, what, is Andy now supposed to uproot her life to
For
go
you?
live in Chicago with Nate? Like, oh, what a
Yes.
loss. Like, that just throws away everything we work towards.
And honestly, at the same time too, like, Andy really only had to work for Miranda for a year,
Yeah.
and he couldn't handle
He
it.
couldn't deal.
Like, that's kinda how your big first corporate job goes.
Yeah, you're kind of the
Yes.
bottom rung, right? Shit rolls downhill.
Yes. But, going back to kinda Andy at the end having the boyfriend and the job, right?
Okay.
It's almost emphasizing that at the end, Andy is capable of having it all,
Right.
right? Like, she not having it all as in she's the CEO of Runway at the end, she's not, but she in some way does have it all. But is that not just promoting another sense of perfectionism for women?
Mhm.
that they have to be in perfect balance in order to be defined as the good character, you know?
Yeah.
She has to find a way to balance her work and her boyfriend perfectly, or, spend more time with the boyfriend, less on the work. And are we supposed to expect at the end of the movie that Andy has just figured out this whole work life balance thing? Like, she's still in corporate journalism. Like, is she not going to work long hours anymore?
Yeah, and just kinda going off of your point there, it's almost just like the happy ending is when you do have that perfect balance. Where, you know what? We've done episodes on this before, it's never a perfect balance, and also,
Nope.
it's okay to not
Mhm.
want the relationship, and if you're listening to this and it's totally okay not to want the successful career, alright? Like,
Mhm.
you don't have to have it all. And
Mhm.
it's just how movies are portraying this. And I have
Mhm.
to slip in one more point about Andy's new job because I have no chill anymore for this movie. Um, she now works for a man, and the environment
Yes.
was very calm. Was that an underlying
No, why did you just do that to
I'm
me?
sorry, it came up as we were, like, talking about it, and I just kinda put that together where she now has a male boss and he
Mhm.
seems really chill, and also the environment she's working in seems really chill, which, like, journalism, no, that's no chill.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it just, like, kinda said, like, "Oh, you know what? Under a male boss, you'll be able to have this work balance."
And speaking of the male bosses, so a big common theme with Miranda is that often her business decisions are viewed as betrayals.
Right.
So the big one, which I do think is a bit of like, I do agree it was a bit of a betrayal, but where she's about to get kicked out
Mhm,
of runway for Jacqueline.
mhm.
So essentially, she gives her the job that Nigel was going to get.
Yes.
Right? That is a betrayal. But another one that she pinpoints is when she's in the car with Andy at the end, where Andy's like, "I would never do that." And she turns and looks at her and she's like, "Well, you already did to Emily."
Right.
And it's just like, okay, Miranda needed somebody to go to Paris with her.
Mhm.
Emily could not go anywhere.
Yeah.
She was in a hospital, which, it's still like I probably would have been upset in Emily's shoes as well.
Mhm.
But say you had two male assistants and one of them couldn't go, most likely the other one would be like, "Well, I guess I have to do it
Yeah.
because this person can't go." And it wouldn't have been looked at as a betrayal of trust.
Yeah, everything's just portrayed of like, "Oh, that's, like, conniving, that's backstabbing," every decision
Mhm.
that they make. And just as we are kind of talking about Jacqueline, how you brought up Miranda's age at the beginning,
Mhm.
her problem is that she's an older woman, God forbid. God forbid a woman
Yeah.
ages. And I know you kind of wanted to brush on that a little bit.
Yeah, similar to how Cruella was evil because she was single. That
Right.
was, like, her biggest crime against, well, I mean, one of her biggest crimes against humanity after the main one, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes, we're just
With
ignoring like
Miranda's
the plot points for the moment,
yes.
just addressing the people.
Yes, that whole plot of 101 Dalmatians makes me cry to this day, but other than that, that was her crime.
Yeah.
But with Miranda, her crime and why she was kind of starting to be pushed out of her career a little bit is she was literally getting old.
And they literally say that in the movie.
They say that. It's just like, "Oh, well, she can't be hip, like, she can't know what's in style or be prepared for these kind of things." It's just like, "You know what? There's, like, 80-year-old men leading massive
I
corporations."
know, no one's saying they're too
And
old. They're like, "Oh,
yeah, no
they're
one
experienced." Like,
yeah, no one is kicking them out or being like, I don't think he understands what is gonna be hip."
ugh,
Like,
give
so
me a
that's
break.
really all I have to say about that is
Yeah.
just her crimes were her perfectionism and control and the fact that she was getting older.
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, like, don't be a woman, and God forbid, don't be an old woman. Like, that's really the takeaway.
That is. Um,
So let's move on to our last character. This is Jessica Pearson from the TV show Suits that came out in 2011. Jessica Pearson, oh, another one who is my idol. Like,
mhm.
what just a strong presence because this is someone.
Followed closely by Donna.
Yeah, Donna. Donna is also
Donna,
awesome.
she's so
Yeah, if
good.
you guys haven't watched Suits, highly recommend. It's a great show.
Mhm.
Also filmed in
Mhm.
Toronto.
My mom thinks her car is in the background of one of the shots.
Nice. I'm pretty sure I've been walking
Yeah.
to school before and, like
You're like, "Harvey Specter?
I know, right? I
Hi."
know exactly where the building is where they shoot it.
Mhm.
Anyway, so this is a woman who is the managing partner of a law firm and one of the most successful
Yes.
law firms in New York City. And, very clearly, this is a male dominated world. They
Yes.
don't they have their female characters in there, but Jessica really is the only one who is of that top level CEO, like has made it. And
I think she's the only female partner entirely in
yeah,
that firm
yeah.
as
Well,
well, at the
in
beginning
that
at
firm,
least.
yes, there are other female characters, but they're all much lower down
Mhm.
on like the career scale. Like Jessica's in all these
Hmm.
boardrooms that are full of men.
Mhm.
There's never really that like partnering female lead who is also in a high level position, especially who is like a main character.
Mhm.
So it's very clear, like she's very good at what she does, but she had to like fight her way to the top,
Mhm.
and she has to
Mhm.
continue to fight to stay at the
Yeah.
top. And it's very much like her way of fighting wasn't always clean, right? Like she had to fight dirty
Yes.
sometimes.
Mhm.
And just underlying, it just seems like, again, that woman who wants to get to the top has to be conniving and backstabbing and do things that really all the male characters were doing as well to get to
Mhm.
the top. But for the female character, it's just like that's highlighted. And then that's
Mhm.
always what, like, that's the thing that comes back to haunt them, right? Like they're
Mhm.
just like, well, we have all this dirt on you. It's just like, you guys all did the exact same thing to become the managing partner.
It's like you're still doing it right
Yeah,
now.
you're still doing it. Yeah, it's always Jessica's character. It's just like, her exit from the show was
Mhm.
literally her being like, okay, I'm being disbarred in New York. I'm going to leave New York. Right? Like, where like there's all these other people doing awful things and they're fine. Like they stay as a lawyer
Mhm.
or doing what they're doing.
Yes. And she is one of the ones where, we've gotten to the point in, I guess, media history where, female leaders are very well accepted.
Mhm.
She's not villainized as much as Miranda is.
No, no, she's not like she is not a bad character at all,
Yes.
right? Like and
Like she's a tough character,
yeah.
but everybody respects her. They're not afraid. They're not afraid of her in the way where where it's like Miranda Priestly.
No,
I'm
no,
scared
like
of
no
you.
one is like quaking in their boots when she walks in the door. Like you can
Yes.
tell that she's just commanding respect, but it's like it's an earned
Mhm.
respect, right? It's not out of fear.
Yes, but tying this back to the beginning about how a common trait with all of these characters we're talking about today is the lack of a stable relationship.
Yes.
A common theme almost through, I don't even like a majority of her seasons is there's usually a relationship off to the side
Mhm.
that is trying to pull her away
Yeah.
from that position. And again, it's usually a very successful man,
Mhm.
but he's like, just maybe take a step back.
Exactly.
Maybe bring on another partner or give more leadership to people underneath you. But she's not asking him to do that.
No, not at all. And like just I want to throw this in as well. She is also a divorcee.
Yep,
She has
she
an
is.
ex-husband and like God forbid a woman gets married once, right? Like if she's
Mm-hmm.
powerful. So yeah, like she's got an ex-husband. I know she has like the ultimate boyfriend who she moves to, I believe, DC with at the end after she's disbarred.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
know throughout the series he was just like, "Oh, I want to be with you, but like I can't be with this corporate CEO you."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, he's the one I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly. So it's just like again, she can't have her career and a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just those little like hidden underlying notes that stories have, and I think it really just does like seep into society's expectations.
Yeah. Shall we discuss our impression of societal expectations now? Or do we have anything left to say about Jessica?
I think that's all for Jessica. We don't have a whole lot because
Mm-hmm.
she is a little bit more of a modern character.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just really believe that for all females, there's just this underlying tone that you need to give up your friends and your
Mm-hmm.
relationships and your family to be
Mm-hmm.
successful. And that's just not true.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I still think, having the friends and the relationship and the family are presented as the things that you need to strive for. So even though it might not be as in your face as, the original Cruella De Vill and the original 101 Dalmatians, or even with Miranda, it is subliminal messaging that if you're choosing that path, you're giving up joys of life.
Yeah,
And you shouldn't want to do that because you should be wanting the other things, the more
exactly.
traditional female role.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a double-edged sword because,
Mhm.
the good characters always have it all, and they make it
Yeah.
seem like that is the end game, when really,
Mhm.
like, if you don't want any of that stuff, that's fine. Like,
Yep.
if you just want your career and that makes you happy and, like, fulfills you, awesome,
Mhm.
right? Like, we shouldn't be villainized to think that, like, we do need to have it all because
Mhm.
so many women don't want that, right? Like,
Mhm.
this again is just what society is telling us we should want and have.
Yes. And kind of speaking of another double-edged sword, there's almost a unintentional result with more modern, even after Jessica Pearson, of modern day career women. It's almost an unintentional result where, even though they're presented in a very positive light, they either are very dramatized, like, I don't need a man,
Mhm.
or dramatized in, I'm at the office 24/7.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a cartoon caricature
Mhm.
of that.
Yep.
So it's very difficult.
It is. It's so difficult. And like my parting thoughts here are, don't be afraid of success and
Mhm.
whatever that success is to you. It does not have to be career. I know that's what we talked about this evening, but really you
Mhm.
can insert whatever
Mhm.
because it is possible to have your version of having it all. There is no set standard of what that is. It's you just taking the things in your life that are important to you, and
Mhm.
that is your all, right? It's going to look so different from your friends and your family. Like Rachele, you and I, we have different versions of having it all,
Mhm.
right? Because we're not the same person, right? We don't
Mhm.
we don't live the same life. We have our
Mhm.
own interests, our own passions, and we have different varying like percentages of
Mhm.
allocating these things in our lives, right? So I just
Mhm.
hope that media can start to paint those kinds of characters that really do resemble what life should be, and not them just telling women like this is what you need or else you're
Mhm.
literally the devil. Like you're just literally the devil if you don't want what the rest of society tells you. So
Yes.
yeah, that's kind of like my parting thought. You don't have to be a bitch to be powerful. I know a
Mhm.
lot of powerful women who are lovely people.
Mhm.
And my last thing would be like the song The Man by Taylor Swift was coming to mind a lot, where
Mhm.
it really was that double standard of men and women. And I know we didn't really talk a whole lot about that tonight.
It's another hour
Oh,
worth of
that's another hour
content.
one. Yeah. That's part two. Um,
Yes.
where it's just how the world reacts to a man. Like if a man and a woman are doing the exact same thing, they will get two completely different reactions from the people around them.
Mhm.
And I always thought like the man was like the perfect way of explaining that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's all I kind of have to say. Rachele, what are your parting thoughts?
Well, you really summarized mine fantastically. So my parting thought is Nate is the real villain of The Devil Wears Prada,
He
and I
is.
wanted to make sure that we made that point one more time.
Absolutely. We're we will legit have an hour-long conversation of why we hate Nate.
He is a horrible boyfriend.
He is. He is. He doesn't want the best for Andy, who is a great girl, and
Mhm.
she should not be afraid to have her great job that she has worked so hard for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another parting thought is that it's okay. We don't have to be perfect,
Mhm.
even though society has wanted to tell us that since day one.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
We are just people.
yeah. So, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Might have been a
Mhm.
little over the place, a little heated at times, but these are
Definitely
things
a
that
little heated.
yeah, these are things that have just been on our mind, so we really had to get them out. And if
Mhm.
you enjoy this show, please leave it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other platform that you are
Mhm.
listening to us on. And if you
Mhm.
feel called to, make sure you share this episode with friends or family, and definitely check out some of our other episodes that we have. They're all pretty good in our opinion. And yeah,
We're
follow.
geniuses.
Let's not go that far. Um, we're intelligent enough.
We are averagely smart.
Yay. Go us.
Yay. Go on.
Definitely check out our Instagram, the Tea with Laura and Rachel. So live like tea.
Live like tea.